Nicolas Cage is probably one of our generation's definitive actors.
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man, Andy Gillard. Hope everyone's keeping well out there right now.
Hold on. We're not even on Zencaster, are we?
Yeah, it's just carrying on.
Oh, sorry, mate. Sorry, mate. I thought we were meant to be like on a different thing.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. I'm starting.
That's all
no,
right.
we're starting again. You get me every week. You're staying in there.
Hey, listen, we don't break the fourth wall, Stu. Just, come on now.
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man, Andy Gillard. Hope you're keeping well right now.
Hey, everybody. Matt Guy here. Hope everyone's doing well.
Good morning, everyone.
But on to this week's film, which is a bit of an odd one, I think is the best way to put it. It's a movie called Wild at Heart from 1990. So I saw this film probably about 12 months ago or so. All I knew about this movie going in was that it was a big Nicolas Cage performance. And also that Terry Wogan interview was the press tour for this film.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all I had for my expectations going in. I thought this is going to be a little bit mad. What did you both think going into this movie? What were you expecting?
My only expectations were set by you, Andy, in asking me if I'd seen it and how it compared to Natural Born Killers, which I'm sure we'll get into much like as we go along. So I expected a whimsical love story intertwined with gratuitous violence, basically.
Right, okay. Stu, what were you thinking?
I had no idea at all. Just for that, I was trying to think of films with Laura Dern that I actually seen her in, other than Jurassic Park and the shit Star Wars film.
The best one.
But other than that, I just went in with a completely open mind, no idea. I mean, Wild at Heart sounds like something that should be on the Sunday night on ITV1, but
It was.
It was, yeah.
was it?
Yeah, it was like a program about like some vets or something, like living in fucking the bush or something like that. Probably like butchered that completely, but yeah, there was a show called Wild at Heart on ITV.
Oh well, there you go then. Justified. Wish we'd done that.
So obviously Laura Dern, as you mentioned, she now seems to have had a bit of a renaissance over the last few years. Like you say, she's back with Star Wars. She was in Marriage Story, which she won the Oscar for, which is a fucking brilliant movie with a really good performance. I only found out though recently the reason we didn't see her anything between Jurassic Park and the last 5 years or so, she was basically blacklisted by Hollywood. So when Ellen DeGeneres came out as gay on her TV sitcom, Laura Dern played her love interest in it. And that was what got her blacklisted. And that's why we didn't see her in anything. Which seems ridiculous because Ellen obviously went on to be the biggest thing since sliced bread for a period of time in the States. Whereas Laura Dern struggles to get work after that, allegedly so. Bit of an odd one, that one is, I felt. Especially because Laura Dern is a really good actor. Everything we've seen her in since, she has been nothing short of excellent. Obviously, the other big name in this movie, the director, David Lynch. Obviously, he's got quite a back catalogue of films and everything. I've not seen any episodes of Twin Peaks, but obviously that is the big one for him, isn't it? Stu, have you watched Twin Peaks?
The original ones, not the new ones. I've
Right.
I've got them. It's been so long. I need to watch it again from the start because I know they did it quite cleverly when they brought it back to the exact amount of time since the first series finished. So I need to go back. I mean, it was fucked up and strange anyway, as you'd expect. But I enjoyed them for what they were. But I was probably a bit too young, to be honest, to kind of appreciate them that much.
Yeah, okay. Matt, have you got much of an experience with David Lynch's back catalogue?
Not really. I know of like Twin Peaks, and I've seen some of the original and how kind of a lasting influence it's had. My expectation was to expect the unexpected. No, my expectation was to expect the fluorescent and the hallucinogenic, so to speak, and it not to be ABC paint by numbers.
Yeah.
And that's what we get.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. That's what Lynch has made a career out of, really, isn't it? It's I do think saying expect the unexpected, I know it's cliched, but that is kind of what you expect with Lynch, is that it's not going to be what a quote-unquote normal linear story is going to be. It's going to be a little bit different.
So the first time I remember hearing about him was the PlayStation 2 advert. They hired him to welcome to the third place with a duck, which is just fucked up. It doesn't make any sense at all, but it's one of them things that you remember. So, well, if this is what he does for adverts, then God knows what the series is. And that's when I went to watch Twin Peaks. So I must have been about 16, 17 when I watched Twin Peaks, which is probably still too young.
I'd imagine so. Have you watched the trailer for this, either of you?
Yeah, I did. I watched it, yeah.
What did you think?
Again, I thought, this is... I thought it veered a little bit too much on the love story side of it, and I didn't think it was quite going to be as kind of violent and stuff as it was in the first opening few scenes. I think, you know how Christ, the films escape me completely now. Adaptation, the trailer made it out to feel like a very different film.
Yeah,
I felt very much the same with this. I didn't feel we were in for the same kind of ride from the trailer, as it wasn't going to be quite as eccentric and frantic.
I saw the trailer after watching the film, and like they're completely different. So that the trailer, it starts with some kind of sans operatic music, then goes into this thrash metally bit in the middle, then goes back to a classical kind of soundtrack to it. It's all over the place. It's really odd. It's slow and tender, and then fast and aggressive, and then medium and sexy. It's weird, and this film is all of those things and none of those things as well, which I suppose is kind of fitting for the trailer. Stu, did you watch the trailer before, after, or?
I watched one trailer after, and it probably is the same one, just because that's what I was saying about adverts earlier, that he knows what he's doing with things that don't make any sense, and that's what I got from that trailer as well.
That's entirely fair. So IMDb describes this movie as young lovers Sailor and Lula run from a variety of weirdos that Lula's mom has hired to kill Sailor.
Can I talk to Lula?
You are not gonna see him ever.
Like hell. I'd go the far end of the world for you, baby.
A man can't ask for more than that.
You move me, Sale. You really do.
You want me to shoot Sailor in the brains with a gun?
Uh-oh. I didn't have much parental guidance.
Baby, you better run me back to the hotel. You got me hotter than Georgia asphalt.
This film starts with Sailor and Lula leaving a theatre. A man stops Sailor, saying that Lula's mother, Marietta, told him that Sailor tried to have sex with her and that Marietta had paid him to kill Sailor. Sailor defends himself and kills the assailant. Sailor gets arrested, goes to prison. We then see him leaving prison after a few years, and Lula rolls up in a convertible. Against her mother's wishes, she hands Sailor his snakeskin leather jacket and they head to the local hotel. We get some weird flashback stuff to Lula when she's talking about this time she was raped by her father's work associate. She says that her mother never knew about him But in the flashback, we see her mother walking in on Lula and the associate, and then we get an image of a car hurtling down a cliffside on fire. Then Lula dreams of the world on fire. It's such a weird and unnerving beginning to a film. I suppose it's the unreliable narrator trope, isn't it, that we're getting off the bat, that we don't quite know who we're going to be trusting and what stories are going to be completely accurate.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that stood out like a sore thumb to me is that they used the word cunt in 1990, which was, as far as I'm aware, wasn't the done thing. We're not in this woke, quote-unquote woke world now where the language hasn't evolved by this point, where it's in common language. So that shocked me. I must admit, I thought, oh, this seems out of place.
That word still feels weird to hear it coming from an American mouth, I think. Like, it's still not quite de rigueur in Hollywood films. We've seen it shitloads in British movies, but yeah, it does sort of strike.
I'll never forget. I'll never forget when me and Sam went to New York a few years ago. We went to go watch King Kong on Broadway. Amazing if it ever comes to any part of the world you're in, and you get the chance to see it on the big stage on stage. And I was talking to the attendant at the door, basically. Like I'd gone to the door. It wasn't quite time for it to go in, and he said, "Oh, are you from England?" And blah 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 blah. Chatting to him, very pleasant kid. And I swore for something, and he laughed, and I must have said something like, dropped something on the floor and went, "Oh, you cunt," and then went to go pick it up or something like that, like, and it just means nothing. And he laughed, and he was like you English, you just love to swear, don't you? Like we just don't swear like you swear. Like it just means it's so much more serious to us. I wish we could swear like you swore. And I was like, just fucking go for it, man. And he went, fuck it. And he was just like, he was class, but he was like having this, we're both speaking the same language, but it means so much, so differently. Just bizarre, like our relationship with swearing and the Americans.
I remember when I went to watch Buried, which is a really good film. And the whole film is set within a casket, and all you see is Ryan Reynolds throughout the whole movie in a coffin. And there's one bit where he tries to call his wife, and I can't remember if it's his sister-in-law or his sister, won't pass a message on. And he calls her a fucking cunt because he's about to die, and obviously things are worked up. I remember the girl who was sitting next to me, I didn't know who she was. She got really offended that he called her a cunt. It got me really angry. I nearly called her a cunt. I'm like, within the context of the film, it is perfectly acceptable. But it's still, especially when we're looking at films from more than a decade ago, it definitely feels out of place. Yeah, it definitely feels massively weird. But Stu, what were your thoughts like from that opening? It is a bit odd. You don't really know your footing, do you?
Well, this is the only time I wish I actually knew what the film was about before I went into it. Because I was completely baffled. And no, I mean, I thought, well, why is his sentence so short, for one? That he's brutally bashed someone's head against the floor, threw him against the wall, killed him, and then he's out in 2.5 years. It seemed a bit odd, but obviously, and then it carries on. But yeah, I couldn't get over how young Laura Dern is in this. It's only 4 years till Jurassic Park. She looks 10 years younger.
Yeah, I think she would have been mid-20s, I think, in this movie, but like you do genuinely believe her at about 20-ish. She does look young. So we then joined Lula's mother. She talks about getting a hitman for Sailor. We then get another flashback to the night that Sailor killed the man. She threatened Sailor in the toilets, so when she lied and said that he was trying to fuck her, actually she was the one trying to proposition him. She knew that Sailor was a bad guy, having worked for the local mobster before he got with the daughter. Lula and Sailor go to see a band. Whilst there, Sailor gets into a fight. He then sings with the band the Elvis song "Love Me." Lula asks why he didn't sing "Love Me Tender." He says that's the song he will sing only to his wife. After the gig, Sailor and Lula return to the hotel. They make love once more and decide to run away to California. We find out that Marietta told Lula her father killed himself, setting himself alight. All of her daydreams are about flames. I'm assuming that is where the relationship comes. So we're 20 minutes in at this point. As I said, just like, I don't know my footing at all through this movie. We're bouncing all over the place. It does at least seem to be paced quite well. I think it is at a decent clip that we're going, but I'm completely weirded out. Like Stu just said, I wish I'd known a bit more going in so I could understand what was going on. It seems to be whatever the threads are which are going on, they're so disparate and so far apart. I don't know how they're ever going to come back together. What did you think after 20 minutes?
At this point, I'm still laughing at it, not laughing with it.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm going, God, this is terrible. But but I'm still enjoying myself. I'm still enjoying the spectacle of it. I'm there going, I've been to plenty of gigs with this kind of music. I like the music, and it's never broke down into 50s Elvis. So I'm enjoying what I'm seeing so far, and I'm thinking that it's strange, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what it felt like. It felt like The Shining in parts, in a strange way. You know, in parts of The Shining where, like, out of nowhere, there's a fucking full-size bear sucking off somebody in a side room. It's just like, at any point, that bear could have turned up and given someone a blowy. Like, you just didn't know where you were, and that's intentional. That's there for a reason, and it absolutely was was how I felt.
Stu, what did you think?
At this point, I got my phone out and was looking at snakeskin coats on eBay. if it wasn't for this, it would have been off. I was so bored. I'd had enough already, and I thought it was almost like being weird for the sake of being weird at this point. And yeah, you get kind of resolutions later, but it was just, maybe it was showing its age a bit, but I want digging it at this point.
Okay. So Marietta hires a private eye to track Sailor and Lula. At the same time, she also hires Santos, the local mob boss, to track and kill Sailor. She tries to talk him out of it, but Santos tells her there is no turning back. Whilst heading to Cali, Sailor and Lula stop off. Sailor is regaling Lula with a story about his sexual exploits. I really laughed when he said that his former beau said to him, "Take a bite of this peach." Like, I wondered if she was related to Castor and Pollux Troy from Face Off for a minute. I wonder if that's where he got it from. I suppose we've got that from Face Off, and the snake skin is obviously what he wears in Snake Eyes as well.
Yeah.
When he wears that batshit suit at the beginning. We get a scene where Marietta scrawls lipstick all over her one hand and then all over her face and body. She's having a breakdown because she cannot call off the mobster. She calls Farragut, who is the private eye, and says she's coming down to be with him to track Lula. Farragut gets taken by Santos's henchmen and murdered.
I, at this point, had in my head that Stu would absolutely love this film. And I'll tell you why, because it had it's not quite an interrogation scene, but when they're like torturing him, basically, it just felt like really hokey camp Bond. And I thought that would be right up your street, Stu.
But that kind of until the Roger Moore films, that wasn't really the intention. I think it's just an age thing with the Sean Connery films, but with Roger Moore, it was hammed up to the max. This, I just don't think it was. I just think it was just not very good.
Whilst continuing on to California, Sailor confesses to Lula that he worked for Santos and talks about him being at Lula's house the night that her dad died. Sailor and Lula witness what they see to be as a bad omen, a car crash with only one survivor. Rather than going to California, Sailor and Lula end up meeting an old friend of Sailor's, Perdita Durango. He asks her if there is a contract out on him. She lies, telling him that she's heard nothing. We get a flashback of hers, and we see that Santos and Marietta setting fire to Lula's dad, so we now know that it wasn't actually suicide. He was murdered. Lula gets sick, so they stay in the motel for a few extra days. Sailor teams up with a small-time crook, Bobby Peru, played by Willem Dafoe. I'm confused as shit why he's wearing those false teeth. Like, he doesn't look like a gangster. He looks like a fucking diddler. It is just... it's weird. I read that apparently Willem Dafoe only found the character when he put those false teeth in. But I don't know I don't know why he did it. I just don't get it.
It was like something from Deliverance.
It was, yeah.
Without the banjos and the sodomy. But which that was the only thing that missing from this film, really, to be honest. But yeah, it was, especially later on when he kind of zooms in on them, you think, why? It's obviously they're not real.
I couldn't wrap my head around what the point was. Because it's a Lynch film, I expect there to be symbolism to it, and I don't know if there was. I don't know if I was looking for something that just wasn't there. Lula figures out that she's sick because she's preggers. Sailor says that he's happy to keep it. Lula says she doesn't think that she is. Bobby Peru threatens to rape Lula. Lula manages to force Bobby away. She stands there thinking, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. As she begins to traumatically reliving her youth where she was raped. Bobby goes to meet Sailor and talks him into robbing a store. Before the robbery happens, Lula tries to talk Sailor out of getting closer to Bobby and has a breakdown. Everything is wild at heart and weird on top. I just wish there was somewhere over the rainbow. Perdita reaches out to Bobby. They discuss the bounty that's on Sailor's head and how when they rob the store, Sailor might just have an accident. Things go wrong on the job. Peru needlessly shoots the store clerk. Bobby reveals to Sailor that he's going to claim the bounty on Sailor's head and that he gave him dummy bullets. Police officer was nearby, overheard the shooting. He catches Sailor and Bobby as they leave the store. The officer shoots Bobby, causing him to blow his own head off. That looked really, really hokey. And I know it's 1990, so the standard of CG and what have you isn't brilliant. But it looked fucking awful. Like he manages to shoot himself in the face with the shotgun, and his head just jumps off his body. Like, it looked really bad.
Yeah, you compare this to RoboCop 3 years earlier.
And
yeah. The Murphy thing's a dummy, but even so, it looks brilliant when his hand goes and
Scanners was like 9 years before.
Good point, yeah. So Sailor is sentenced to 6 years in prison. Lula's mother tells her not to meet Sailor when he leaves. She tells her to leave her alone and throws water over a framed picture of her mom. The picture sizzles and melts. Lula is there with their son to pick him up. He tells her he isn't good enough for them and will not be joining them. After being knocked out by some hoods, Sailor has a vision from Glinda the Good Witch, who tells him don't turn away from love. Sailor sees the error of his ways and runs after Lula. While she's sat in a traffic jam, Sailor is climbing over the cars to get to her, where he starts to sing Love Me Tender, the song reserved only for his wife. The end. Now, we got through that really quick. It feels like there's a lot of peripheral stuff around this film, but not a lot of story. I don't know if that's a fair assessment. I don't think I've gone through it fast. I don't think there's a lot there to just go through, to be honest.
No, there isn't at all.
And it's a 2 hour, 5-minute film.
I felt every minute of it.
Yeah, I fully expected to be the odd one out with this because of how highly rated it is, but I hated every single minute of it. I mean, I laughed at. There's bits where I laughed at, but I don't know if you're supposed to have been laughing at it.
Well, when I've been doing a bit of like the stuff that we'll get to in a minute, all of the reviews of this film refer to it as a comedy. So I think you are supposed to laugh at it, but I don't really see it as a comedy. I don't think there's enough humour in it to really laugh at. There's a few bits where you might just mirthfully chuckle, but nothing proper laugh at.
Is this a case of it doesn't translate?
Maybe.
And we're looking at this 30 odd years later, and we're in a different country, and we just don't get it. Maybe
there is some of that. I don't know. So the budget on this film was $10 million. The box office, I could only find the North American box office and not the international. It got $14.5 million, which, when you adjust it for inflation, works out to about $31 million in current money. I mean, that's not a bad return for an R-rated movie. And like I said, it's an R-rated comedy, technically, which generally don't seem to do very well. But it's done all right in retrospect. 1990 was a very different looking box office to what we get today. So obviously last time when we discussed Drive Angry, it was all sequels and comic book movies. In this time, there is only one comic book movie and 2 sequels in the top 10. So would you like to have a guess at the comic book movie or the sequel from 1990 in the top 10?
It's not gonna, it's not a trick question. It's not Last Action Hero, is it?
No, it's not. I do like Last Action Hero.
It's 1990. Dick Tracy.
Dick Tracy's. Oh, actually, that's 2 comic books then, isn't it? I forgot Dick Tracy was a comic strip. Yeah, that's up there. The other one, 1990.
Give us a clue.
Batman Returns.
No, it would be my favourite comic book that isn't from DC Comics and animated series.
DuckTales.
No. It would be the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The 2 sequels.
Again, the one that you don't think of as a comic, but it was.
Yeah. The 2 sequels in at number 10 was Back to the Future Part 3, which got $87 million. And in at number 7 was Die Hard 2. Yes. So those are the 2 sequels. The biggest selling movie that year was Ghost with $205 million. So it just shows how far we've come from 205 million being the biggest box office draw. And now we're looking, generally speaking, at around $1 billion. Mad times. The best picture nominations for this year's Oscars: Goodfellas, Godfather Part 3, Ghost, Awakenings, and the winner was Dances with Wolves, which also gave Kevin Costner the Best Director. Fucking Goodfellas was out this year, and Dances with Wolves won Best Picture and Best Director. What an absolute shambles the Oscars are. Before I give you the scores, do you want to tell me what you think this film is going to get out of 10 or 100? Stu?
It's going to be high because it's all so wanky. It's one of them things where you know that it's so far that side of things. I mean, critics, I'm going to guess because it's Lynch, 9 or something silly like that. Audience around about 7 or 8. Somehow.
Matt, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I agree. I think the critics will be around an 8.5. Audience score 6.5.
So the audience scores on IMDb, it's got a 7.2, and the Rotten Tomatoes audience was an 81%. The critical scores, the Metacritic gave it a 52, and Rotten Tomatoes critical was a 67.
No way.
So actually, the critics didn't like this as much as the audience, which I'm very much surprised at, because like Stu said, it's a little bit arty-farty, so I expected the critics to be a bit more appreciative of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Jonathan Rosenbaum, he said perhaps the major problem is that despite Cage and Dern's best efforts, Lynch is ultimately interested only in iconography and not in the characters. Scott Tobias said that there's a spontaneous, anything can happen feeling to it that is the primary appeal of any road movie. Variety said it's joltingly violent, wickedly funny, and rivetingly erotic. And Mike Massey said that most of the time it's unquestionably disturbing, but every so often hints at a deeper meaning that pokes through all the strangeness. I think there's hints of a deeper meaning. I don't think it ever pokes through. I think it just hints at it. I don't think anything breaks that surface, personally.
I can't think of anything that jumps out to me. Again, sorry, I might not have even have been one by the time this film was released. So I don't know where we are culturally at this point or anything like that. I never lived through it or anything. So, but if this was a social commentary or anything like that, it didn't show it through this film. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. Stu, what do you think of what the critics had to say on this?
You can see some of it was so blatant, like you said, the No Place Like Home, and then cutting away and looking at her feet and the red slippers and that kind of thing. But it seemed like there was something there that we're just not getting, and I don't know why. I don't know what it is, because there was weird cutaways, like the fire, and it was there was hard cuts there for a reason, but it didn't make any sense, like a lot of it. So yeah, I think it was just too much.
So the fan response on Amazon.com, it's got a 4.3 out of 5 after 1,199 reviews. 83% being either 4 or 5 stars. So, yeah. Albatross gave it a 4-star review saying, I guess there's probably 3 types of people when it comes to David Lynch films. 1, people who love his work, find it unique, deep and refreshing change from the Hollywood norm. 2, people who find it a pretentious mess lacking in any real story. And 3, people who say, who's David Lynch? If you fall into the 3rd category, I guess jumping in at his 1990 film Wild at Heart is as good a place as any to start your journey into his twisted mind. This is a quite typical David Lynch film, in that the narrative deliberately strays away from being particularly linear, and in many cases is open to interpretation as to what is actually going on in the story. Much of what you get from a David Lynch film is based on how it makes you feel rather than the story it tells. I think that's quite a fair critique of the movie, actually. James Winfield did not like the film, though. He gave it 1 star. If the pandemic hasn't quite taught me that life is too short, making it through around 40 minutes of this movie did. A cosmos of turgidity, unintelligible trash for those far more easily pleased than I. Avoid. And Weird Donut said, I set off for an IQ test this morning as I watched this last night and found it to be utter drivel. I must be thick. All of those other appreciative reviews, and then there's me thinking the opposite. I need testing. Yep, that must be it. In fact, I never made it to the end. Stay away. So, the good, the bad, and the crazy. Matt, start us off.
So the good for me would have been Dafoe in this film that stopped it from being left behind bad for me. His character it was fitting with the rest of the film. He was strange, he was odd, he was weird, but I found him mildly entertaining at parts, with a kind of, I liked the whole Colonel Sanders vibe of like the hitmen recruitment agency as well. There was some interesting characters within the shit show that we were being presented that, if actually some development was given to them, would have made it a lot better. And William Dafoe was one of these. Really, I enjoyed his character a bit. It's about as good as it gets. The bad was, I was physically ashamed of watching this and putting my wife through it, because I said to her, Wild at Heart, it's going to be like a love story. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. And she's watching it and she keeps looking at me and not even saying anything. That's how I know how bad it is. She just looks at me and I'm like, God, and I'm just like, God, this film's so shit. This is awful. This is absolutely abysmal. And I can just see it in her eyes. Like, she's like, you know, you do a lot, you do, Matt. You go play five-a-side, you record these podcasts, you go out and stuff like this. So when we spend time and watch film together, like, it's nice. And then we watch that. Awful. The Crazy, I believe that was Nick Cage's real singing voice.
Yes,
and
was.
He has the voice of an angel.
Yeah. Really impressed with that.
Yeah, it was actually quite good. And I like Elvis and that kind of music, oddly enough. And I thought it was really good. I actually quite enjoyed it. I would listen to it.
Yeah, I want a film about Elvis played by Nick Cage now. Like 100% I'd be up for that. Stu, what's yours?
The good was Nick Cage's singing voice. That is it. That is it. The rest of it was absolute wank. I mean, it's without doubt, it's even going below next.
Wow.
Because I absolutely hated every single minute of this film. Like I already said, it was pretentious bollocks from start to finish. It didn't make sense. And then when it did make sense, there was no real payoff. It could have been... It could have been anything. It could have been so much. It could have been a slap. If this was a slapstick film, it would have been great. But it wasn't. It was filled with all this other stuff, which didn't need to be there. And I know we said that things that don't need to be in films a lot, and there's 3 stories in one. But like you said about the Hitman Detective Agency, that was funny. If that had been a film in itself, if that had been what like it's described as, that. This is what it is. It's going to be a cast of weird and wacky, almost like a kind of Hitman version of the Wacky Races. I'd watch that. I'd watch that all day long. But this film is not that. It's something else. And thankfully, I'm never going to have to watch it ever again. The Crazy, I mean, look, because the whole Willem Dafoe teeth thing, I had to have a look at certain things and found out that he actually really did piss in that toilet. In that rape scene, and that it actually wasn't plumbed in. So some lackey had to come and clean up his piss off the floor. So
that's horrible.
That's the best. That's as crazy as this film gets, and that's probably better than the entire film itself.
So my good, I really struggle to put into words this film. Like, it's a wafer-thin plot, but it does feel like there's stuff going on around the plot. It does feel like there is a deeper meaning to it, but I can't quite get to it. But at the same time, it also feels quite light and throwaway. It feels very unique, which is something I do associate with David Lynch. I don't know if that's madness or genius, though, if I'm perfectly honest. That it does both, but maybe does neither. I'm not quite sure. But what I would say is it does swing for the fences. It is balls to the wall. And I do appreciate that if you're going to try for something, at least go for it. The bad, there's a lot of sex in this film, but it isn't a sexy film. So like, I remember in like Game of Thrones, they used to joke that whenever there was sex on scene, they used to call it sex position, because all it was about was giving exposition, just having a normal conversation, but giving you something to look at. And that's sort of what it felt like. Because I mean, even though Laura Dern is absolutely gorgeous in this movie, at no point do you sort of think there's anything lusty going on with them. It just feels very... yeah. It just feels very superficial, I think. But again, I think that might be down to Lynch, if I'm perfectly honest. The Crazy. So this is the film I saw shortly before texting you to say, I've got an idea for a podcast.
Oh, God in heaven.
Because this is the dichotomy of Cage, isn't it? It's the madness of everything in the films he picks and the work that he puts into his acting. Like, this does sum him up quite well, I think. The other crazy thing is, like, you might be able to help me with this, but I don't understand the Wizard of Oz references. There's quite a few of them. So we get the Wicked Witch. They mention Toto. We get the red shoes clicking her heels together after Bobby tries to rape her. I wish there was somewhere over the rainbow. The crashes when the world gets turned upside down. I think that evokes the the house being blown away. And then we get Glinda the Good at the end. So there's all these references to Wizard of Oz, but I don't know how any of those actually run alongside this film. I don't know what this film is trying to say about the Wizard of Oz, or vice versa.
Nothing. It's a Lynch thing. He does it all the time.
Oh, okay. So again, looking for something that possibly isn't there.
It's just like a director cameo kind of thing.
Okay, right.
So if you go back and watch Twin Peaks, there's so much in there all the time. I don't know about the new stuff because, like I said, I ain't seen the new ones, but the originals, it's all over the place.
Interesting. So, did you enjoy this film? I'm going to be the outlier here. I think I did. I say I think because I'm not 100% sure, but I have watched it a few times over the past 12 months. It's interesting, and I want to get it. I want to understand it, and I think that's commendable. Maybe I don't know.
Is this?
I'm on the fence, but I think I like it.
Is it like when you kind of drip hot wax on yourself for the first time, and you don't know if it's pleasure or pain?
It might be, yeah. It very well might be that. Stu, yes, no. I'm guessing it's a no, but yeah.
It's an absolute definitive no for me.
Okay. Matt?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. Like, it was a struggle from start to finish. I'm okay with experimental films, and I'm okay with trying to do something different, and I enjoy the fact that it's not cookie cutter and stuff in film, but this was self-indulgence in the extreme with very little payoff or very little. There's very little to enjoy about it, and I will openly admit that I'm not as an aficionado with film, as yourself, Andy, and others. But I don't even feel like it's just me being stupid watching this and not enjoying it. I just don't think it's a very good film at all.
That's fair enough. So, based on this film and this film alone, was Cage good or was he bad? Stu?
His singing was good. And his choice of clothing was... I mean, that was another crazy... That was his actual jacket. He owned that jacket himself.
Oh, really? Fantastic.
There was something about how he gave it to... It was something about Laura Dern's mom or dad or something in a film, and then he gave it to her at the end of the film. This is... I mean, I was looking at things... I was reading stuff about the film when I was watching it because it was so shit. But yeah, the fact that that was his actual coat, his actual jacket, and he bought that to set. I mean, he wasn't... He didn't sting the place out, did he? I mean, he did, again, like we spoke about in the past, that he did what he had to do, but I can't give him a yes for this. No one, apart from, I think Willem Dafoe probably gets a pass because he was, apart from the weird teeth, he was very good, but no, he's not. Not on this. Bad.
Matt?
By giving him a yes, it's paying this film a compliment, which I can't do. He was entertaining in it. He was funny in it. His delivery of his lines were good, and the chemistry with Dern's character was really fun. Really fun. Really enjoyed it. If this film was just a road trip gone wrong between two star-crossed lovers that come from a shit heap family background who find each other, this film would have been 10 times better. 10 times better. But it's not at all. And I think Nick Cage was entertaining in this in spite of the film, not because of the film. And so for that reason, I'm out. No, for that reason, I can't say yes, he's a good actor in it, because I don't think the film allowed him to be, unfortunately.
I think this is a first where I'm going to say yes. I think he was excellent. I think the three main actors in this were all really, really good. I remember the story about Christopher Nolan casting Heath Ledger as the Joker because of Brokeback Mountain. He said that he was a fearless actor because of that. I think any director who saw Nick Cage in this film in the 90s would have thought the same, that he was fearless. I think this film is what won him his Oscar. If he didn't do this, I don't think he's going to get cast in something like Leaving Las Vegas. So for that, yeah, it's a yes for me on this one. So finish the sentence. If you enjoyed Wild at Heart, you might also like. I'm going to go a bit out of the box on this one again, and I'm going to say Mom and Dad. So obviously, I know we loved Mom and Dad, great film. Could you just imagine that this film was Kendall and Brent's early years when we knew that they were a little bit crazy? And this was actually them, and then they settle down in suburbia. So Sailor and Lula become Brent and Kendall. So watch this, watch Mom and Dad. That's what I'm saying. Stu?
That actually kind of makes this film better, you know. I mean, if you enjoyed this film, you need your head testing for one. I mean, I'm not against experimental, weird films. I mean, if you want to mess with time, then go and watch a Nolan film. Go and watch Memento or something like that. But, I mean, if you want things that are not in the right order and it's got a bit of violence and it's actually well made, let's go and watch Pulp Fiction again.
Superb film. I still think that's probably my favourite Tarantino, and I am a fan of Tarantino, but I don't think he's ever been able to top that one personally. Matt?
So part of the bias of this film and how I felt about it was it stacks up with a top 3 of all time films for me in Natural Born Killers. Now, Natural Born Killers is very much a spiritual successor to this film, and it is this film in a lot of ways. It's a story of Mickey and Mallory. It's my favourite ever love story, Natural Born Killers, because it's love that perseveres through everything that's wrong in the world and everything, murder, violence, depravity, rape, everything, and it's a love story throughout it all, and it's a play on Americana, and it talks about how we have this fixation with serial killers and how we love to see everything that's wrong in the world. It's everything that this film wants to hint at, but it's actually done well. I love Natural Born Killers. It's just sensational. It's experimental. It's a social commentary of America at the time. It's got a love story. It's very violent. It does what I understand One Division does, in that it will cut in and take a sample of a different style of TV and just do that for a little bit, like the 50s American TV sitcom. There's a bit of that in there with like a cast being watched by an audience and like with canned laughter and stuff like that. And it just does it really well. Robert Downey Jr. is in it for a short while and very early role for him. He's sensational. And honestly, I can't say enough good things about Natural Born Killers. And if just watch it, let us know on Twitter how this film is directly influenced Natural Born Killers, but just does it 10 times better, and you'll really enjoy it.
Excellent. I'm going to add that to my list because I still haven't got around to it.
I can't believe that.
I know it very much sounds like my kind of film, but for whatever reason, just never got around to it.
The problem is, for me, with Natural Born Killers, is it falls into the category of, there's an excellent company on Instagram called Hell on Shirts, and I post you their shirts all the time in our WhatsApp group. I've got a Natural Born Killers one, and it's got Mickey and Mallory Knox on the front. But on the back, in massive letters, it is part of like the ending of the film. It says, it's just murder. All of God's creatures do it, which is kind of the justification for some of the things that they do on this like road trip that they're on. But it's just in massive, huge letters, and I just feel as like an adult now that goes to National Trusts. I can't wear it. I can't wear it anymore. I remember when I was in New York, I wore my Crow T-shirt that says "Death is coming" on the back, and I had like more than a couple people be like, "Death is coming! What the fuck?" And they were like proper like because of the subways over in New York, they're something else. Like it's just a microcosm of every single individual kind of person there could be in one incredibly fast moving vehicle. And this guy was going absolutely like, I can't believe you're wearing that. I can't believe it. I think he must have thought I was some kind of Satanist.
Probably, yeah.
Like one of the goths in South Park, flicking your fringe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You could be like Billy Burke from Drive Angry, leading your own cult. Yeah,
I could have been.
So that's us done with another Nick Cage movie. If you've seen this film or any other one that we've ever discussed ever, let us know about it. CageFightingPod@gmail.com. Make sure you've got us on the Twitter as well, and that's at CageFightingPod. This is where we will ask you to ask us your questions or answer our polls, give opinions, anything and everything really. As you're listening to us now, please make sure that you are following us on your favourite podcatcher. That way you won't miss an episode. Whilst you're there subscribing, please, if you could leave us a review. Every time we get a review, apparently it pushes us up the analytics and it just helps other people like yourselves find us. So we would genuinely appreciate it. And also, if you could tell a friend about us, we would love that. And finally, just thank you once again for just letting us into your earbuds for another week. We do appreciate your time. So for this week, Matt, would you like to say goodbye?
Look after yourself, guys. Stay safe.
Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Doesn't even deserve a quote from this film at all. I'm not even doing it today. Had enough. Take care. Love you all.
It's goodbye from me. And remember, I do sure like a woman with nice tits like yours. See you next week.
You know, I sure do like a woman with nice tits like yours who talks tough and looks like she can fuck like a bunny.